Let's see. You've had 4 no-hitters, a perfect game. You have struck out 18. You have a World Series record of 15 in one game. Where does this one fit in as far as thrills are concerned?
I don't know, Vinny. This has got to be as high as any of them. This whole year is a thrill.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Fenway Park.
Look at Mark Spidrich now. Each time he gets the ball back, you'll see him mumble a couple of words to the ball.
The first man ever to pitch 5 career no-hitters.
Catch a ball, Joe.
I don't believe what I just saw.
And it's another chance for Mitchell, and he makes a bare-handed catch. Ricky goes, a pitch kick, and he's going to have it. Leaps high in the air, and he's got it. An incredible catch by the kid.
And let it be said that number 8, Cal Ripken Jr., has reached the unreachable star.
Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
Now, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, we invite you to rise.
Welcome to The Daily Rewind, brought to you by thisdayinbaseball.com. I'm Tom Hannon, and I'm your host. We bring you the voices of the past and all the golden nuggets you just can't get from looking at stats. And today, I'm beyond excited to bring you Hall of Famers Don Drysdale and Sandy Koufax. And you're going to listen to Drysdale talk about Koufax and his incredible career, and then Drysdale is going to describe the holdout that they had together. Vin Scully interviews Koufax after the 1965 World Series, where he won the World Series MVP. Now, what inspired me to do this podcast were the events that happened on February 28th, 1966. Refusing to report to spring training camp, Dodger pitchers Sandy Koufax and Don Drysdale began a joint holdout, asking for a $1 million 3-year contract to be divided equally between them. The deal, equivalent to an annual salary of $167,000 for each hurler, will make them the highest paid players in baseball, easily surpassing Willie Mays' $125,000 yearly. Now, despite a lot of back and forth and a lot of gamesmanship, the deal itself didn't actually happen. But on March 30th, Drysdale and Koufax will end their holdouts, each signing a 1-year contract worth under $150,000. Koufax, however, will become the highest paid player in the game. And it was a real hurdle at this particular time because they became the first pitchers to make over $100,000 a year. And they did this without a collective bargaining agreement. So you'd have to understand how hard this was. Now, of course, they realized the leverage that they had over the Dodgers at that time because it was one of the best pitching combinations in the history of the game. And they did have that type of leverage because without Drysdale and Koufax, the Dodgers would have not had a very successful 1966 season. And, of course, they did make it to the World Series in 66. Now, their holdout would effectively change the scope of baseball in the sense of the collective bargaining agreements because it inspired the owners to create a collective bargaining agreement because they didn't want this to happen to them again. And in fact, as I heard on a podcast earlier this week in Baseball History, which is a great podcast and I highly recommend it, they talked in depth about Koufax and Drysdale and how the owners really boxed themselves into the corner by putting that players couldn't collude and therefore owners couldn't collude because the owners are the only one who ever really collude. It's not happened in baseball history with players other than in this instance. So it's an interesting listen and I highly recommend it. I am not going to get into detail on the contract and what happened. I'm going to let Don Drysdale tell you all about it, and I'm going to let him tell you about the marvelous career of Sandy Koufax, and I'll be back to you when that's over.
Who threw an overpowering fastball and dynamic curve. This Dodger ace recorded 4 no-hitters and once shattered the single-season strikeout record. His name, Sandy Koufax. Sandy Koufax had one of the most unusual careers of any legendary athlete. He pitched in the major leagues for only 12 years, and in half of those years he was considered mediocre at best. But in his final 6 years, from 1961 to 1966, Koufax was as close to being invincible as any pitcher who ever played the game. He led the National League in earned run average 5 straight years. He led his team, the Los Angeles Dodgers, to 2 World Series titles. And one year, 1963, he was named the league's most valuable player. But what most people remember about Sandy Koufax was his ability to simply overpower hitters.
Sandy was a power pitcher. There's no question, power with a capital P. Had a great fastball, great curveball. At the end, he kind of played around a little bit with a little fork ball and that. But, I mean, he would play around with that when he had a little bit of a lead. When he got into trouble, he went back to fastball, curveball. And I think the thing that made him so tough to hit is because he threw them both so hard. And there was the extreme between the two was so great. I mean, a fastball, he'd ride a fastball up in here, and he'd start a curveball with a great velocity, and then it would go straight down. Well, if you're a hitter, you can't adjust that way. You could not, off of certain pitchers, a hitter can say, I'll look for that fastball, but I know I can still hit the curve. Not with Koufax. Not with a power pitcher. Power pitcher, you can't work that way. So, but every time he went out there, I mean, it would never surprise you to see him pitch a no-hitter because he was just that dynamic.
Sandy set a major league record by pitching 4 no-hitters, breaking the record of 3 set by Bob Fetter. Koufax pitched his first no-hitter in 1962 and then pitched 1 in each of the next 3 years. His 4th no-hitter was especially remarkable in that it was also a perfect game. 27 up, 27 down. For all his heroics, Sandy was a shy, introspective man who disliked attention from the media. Today, he still avoids making public appearances.
Sandy likes to be alone. He doesn't like a lot of the public light. He'll do things that he has to do around his peers and around his own people. Sandy is one of the funniest guys you've ever been around. Well, the public doesn't know that. The public only knows the mystique that the writers have been able to print because that's all the writers know about Sandy Koufax. Sandy Koufax is a wonderful person. He just likes to be alone. And I've said, hey, people have asked me 1,000 times, why doesn't he? Why? I said, wait a minute. I said, everybody has their own way of living their life. I mean, we're here on borrowed time. It's short time, and that's the way that he wants to live, and that's the way it's going to be, and he's not going to change.
Born and raised in Brooklyn, New York, Sandy's first love was basketball, not baseball. He starred on his high school's basketball team and received an athletic scholarship to the University of Cincinnati. In his freshman year at Cincinnati, Sandy tried out for the baseball team in the spring and made the team as a pitcher. Although his skills were unpolished, his blazing fastball gained the attention of several baseball scouts. The Dodgers offered Sandy a $14,000 signing bonus, and suddenly this 19-year-old prodigy was playing for his home team, the Brooklyn Dodgers. Because of his large signing bonus, Sandy was required to play for the Major League club for 2 years. Without the benefit of honing his skills in the minor leagues, Sandy's development was hampered. During his first 6 years with the Dodgers, from 1955 to 1960, Sandy saw spot duty and accumulated an unimpressive record of 36 wins and 40 losses. He was a hard-throwing pitcher who suffered control problems.
Pitching is so precise. To me, it's as precise as a golf swing because everything has to be in synchronization to have consistency. And I can't think of many other things. There's fine points of hitting, a little hitting zone like this, but when you get into pitching, you think of the whole body motion, the release point and things like that, and that's what takes everybody. Some have a chance to, they pick it up earlier, and others it takes a little bit longer, and it took Sandy a little bit longer, but once he got that, the complete body control together, I mean, he was awesome.
The turning point in Sandy's career came in the spring of 1961, when his catcher, Norm Sherry, suggested that he not throw so hard. Koufax soon discovered that by easing his pitching motion, not only did his accuracy improve, his velocity stayed the same. In the regular season that year, Sandy won 18 games and struck out 269 batters, breaking the National League record previously held by the legendary Christy Mathewson. Once considered a bust, Sandy was now on the verge of reaching his full potential. In his prime, Sandy Koufax had all the ingredients of a dominant pitcher. He threw a blazing fastball, he had a hard-breaking curve, and he threw both pitches with great accuracy. Mentally, he was just as tough.
A situation happened, and Lou Brock would be the one to tell you this story. And Jimmy Lefevre, the manager now of the Chicago Cubs, was just a baby, came up with us his first year, and Brock walked. Sandy's pitching, Brock walked. He stole second, he stole third, and scored on a fly ball. Now, they get a run without a hit, and Sandy is really hot. And because Brock kind of danced around a little bit, and it was in Lou's younger days. And Frenchie was sitting next to me in the dugout, and I had my arm up like this and around him. And Frenchie said, boy, he said, B, he says, Brock's lucky Sandy's pitching, he said, because doing all that dancing around, stealing those bases, he said, you know, he ought to go down. I said, well, I don't know how lucky he is, Frenchie. We'll see. And he came back up again. And Sandy hit him right in the middle of the back, right between the shoulder blades. He went down. He got up, as every hitter will. He got up, and he started to go to first base. He took one step, fell right flat on his face, and they carried him off on a stretcher. And he was out for a month. So beat Koufax. Don't embarrass him while you're beating him, because you're going to pay the price. Didn't do it very often, but that just happened that particular time. And I talked to Lou Brock about it. We'll see each other every now and then. And Lou says, he says, I should have never done that. Steal, fine, but don't be jumping around like that.
In 1963, Sandy Koufax distinguished himself as one of the best pitchers in the league when he won 25 games and lost only 5. He led the league with a 1.88 earned run average and set a National League record with 306 strikeouts. Sandy also led the Dodgers into the World Series, where they faced the powerful New York Yankees. In the opening game, Koufax was pitted against the Yankees' ace, Whitey Ford. Sandy served immediate notice that he was on top of his game by striking out the first 5 batters he faced. Sandy would set a new World Series record by striking out 15 batters as Los Angeles defeated New York 5-2 in Game 1.
The first game of the 63 World Series with the Yankees, our scouting report said that you can't pitch Richardson high. Bobby Richardson, the second baseman of the Yankees, and Sandy, you know, he was a high ball hitter, so keep the ball down on him, don't pitch him high. Well, by the time the day was over, I think Richardson struck out 4 times and just wailing away at high fastballs up here, and he was just overmatched.
The Dodgers won the first 3 games, and in Game 4, Sandy Koufax and Whitey Ford battled each other again. Sandy allowed just 1 run on 6 hits, struck out 8 batters, and went the distance as the Dodgers defeated New York 2-1. In sweeping the Yankees, Sandy Koufax demonstrated some of the finest pitching ever seen in World Series play. Not to be confused with a crafty or finesse pitcher, Sandy used brute power to overwhelm his opponents.
When I think of crafty, I think of Whitey Ford. Whitey was a crafty pitcher. Now, there's two guys in the Hall of Fame. Whitey was crafty. I mean, he would sink the ball and he would bring it in here, throw the good breaking pitch in here on your knees, change a little bit. Then he'd turn around and back you off and here and do things like that. Sandy wasn't like that. Sandy just said, you know, he was like a bull in a china closet. Here I am, hit it, boom, and here he came.
That year, 1963, Sandy earned his first Cy Young Award and was named the National League's most valuable player. In 1965, Sandy Koufax lived up to his reputation as the man with the golden arm. He struck out 382 batters, shattering the major league record. He led the league with 26 wins and had the league's lowest earned run average. That year, Sandy also pitched a perfect game against the Cubs for his fourth no-hitter, another major league record. Sandy earned his second Cy Young Award and capped off his brilliant year by leading the Dodgers into the World Series against the Minnesota Twins. With the series tied at 2-all, Sandy recorded 10 strikeouts and led Los Angeles to a 7-0 victory. In the seventh game, manager Walter Alston let Sandy start despite only 2 days' rest. Sandy rewarded his manager by pitching a 3-hit shutout for a 2-0 victory and another World Series title. In the post-game celebration, there was no doubt who the series hero was.
But here's the fella who gave the Dodgers the championship. Sandy, in Los Angeles, when you pitched your 7-0 shutout, you were quoted as saying after the game, "I feel 100 years old." So today, how do you feel?
101.
101.
I feel great, Betty. I know I don't have to go out there anymore for about 4 months.
Sandy, it appeared from upstairs that your fastball was really your only pitch for quite some time.
Yes, it was. I don't know what it was today. I didn't have the curveball at all, and I wasn't getting it over, and I just stayed with the fastball and tried to get it in pretty good spots, and when I got the lead, I tried to keep him from pulling the ball if I could.
Most veteran newspapermen around the ballpark were watching to see when you and Drysdale arrived which of the two had already shaved, because it's traditional that the pitcher with the beard is going to pitch. But you and Drysdale both came in unshaven. When did you find out you were going to pitch today?
Well, I found out when we got here. That's why neither of us were shaved.
Well, you didn't know until you got here?
No.
Now, tell me when you found out. Was it in front of the entire club?
Yeah.
Did the manager go over or what?
Yeah, Walt had a meeting, and he said that he thought he'd like to start the left-hander, and he had a reason for it. He said, if I have to make a switch, I'd rather go left, right, left. Talking about Peronowski as his last man if he had to make 2 moves, then start the right-hander and go left. You don't change their lineup any when you do that.
Let's see. You've had 4 no-hitters, a perfect game. You've struck out 18. You have a World Series record of 15 in one game. Where does this one fit in as far as thrills are concerned?
I don't know, Vinny. This has got to be as high as any of them. This whole year was a thrill. We were a ball club that everybody said was going to finish 5th, and we lost Tommy Davis. They thought we were going to finish 8th.
Sandy, thank you so very much, and now go on back and sit down and relax a little while.
Thank you, Vinny.
Certainly, one of the greatest pitching duos in baseball history belonged to the Los Angeles Dodgers during the 1960s. From the left side, there was Sandy Koufax, a man capable of throwing a no-hitter on any given night. And from the right side, there was Don Drysdale, the tall sidewinder who threw a wicked fastball and slider. Just prior to the 1966 season, Sandy and Don made headline news when they staged a holdout together. They were demanding a bigger contract from the Dodgers' general manager, Buzzy Bavasi. Don Drysdale recalls how it all began.
Well, we basically had dinner one night, and my wife at the time, she was listening to us talk, and Sandy mentioned, I could see something was bothering him. I said, hey, Koo, what's the matter? Yeah, I said, you try and be a nice guy, and you try and get things out of the way, and now they want to be smart about it. I said, what happened? And he said, well, I go in and try and think I'm going to get my contract signed. They said, how can we give you this much when Don only wants this much? Well, that was a year after the 65 season, we won 52 games between us. We beat Minnesota in the World Series. We're the world champions, and now we're going to 66. And I said, well, when did you go in and talk to him? He said, I went in today. I said, well, what other day did you go in? He said, I haven't. I said, you haven't? I said, what do you mean you haven't? He said, I haven't talked to him. I said, really? He said, I'm honest. So I said, well, that's interesting, because I said, I went in 2 days ago and they told me the same story. They said, how can we pay you this when Sandy only wants this? And so right away at that time, my wife said, well, you know, that's easy to do. Why don't you go in together? So I looked at him, and, you know, in those days, no one ever went in together. You never talked salary. Nobody knew salaries or anything like that. And you did everything on your own. So he said, well, that's not bad. Let's do it. So we went in later on. We went in a few days later, and we saw Buzzy Bavasi, and here we come prancing into his office together. Well, his face, I mean, he went, the look on his face, he couldn't believe it.
When Koufax and Drysdale held out together, they left the general manager little choice. After several weeks of negotiations, Bavasi came to terms with this dynamic duo, making Koufax and Drysdale the first pitchers ever to break the $100,000 barrier. In 1966, Sandy Koufax had another brilliant season. He led the league with 27 wins, 317 strikeouts, and had an earned run average of 1.73, which led the league for the 5th straight year. Sandy earned his 3rd Cy Young Award and led the Dodgers to another World Series appearance. Hindered by some shaky fielding, the Dodgers lost to the Baltimore Orioles in 4 straight. While it had been known for several years that Sandy was pitching in pain due to an arthritic elbow, no one anticipated that this would be Sandy's last year, especially given his recent stellar performance.
Well, we all pitch in pain. You know, that's something that you just, that's part of the game. You know, your arm isn't made to pitch. And doctors will tell you that. And he was taking all of his things for his arthritic elbow and things like that. And, you know, we're all taking things for whatever pains that we had. And that's just part of it. And then after 1966, why, he just said that's it.
On November 16, 1966, Sandy called a hasty press conference to announce that at 30 years old, he was retiring from baseball. Even his closest teammates were surprised.
I was a little surprised. But I knew that he was he carried I don't want to say, it could be a grudge, maybe that's the right word. He carried a very, I thought, an ill feeling inside of the holdout and of the year before when he had won, and he wasn't really that happy with his salary. I think that there was something in there, but he said that's it and walked away.
Sandy pitched only 12 years in the major leagues, and during the first 6 years, he struggled with his control. But once he mastered the art of pitching, he became what some people consider the greatest pitcher the game has ever seen. 5 years after his retirement, Sandy Koufax was inducted into baseball's Hall of Fame. Long live Sandy Koufax, and long live his legend.
Now, I hope you enjoyed that interview with Don Drysdale, Vin Scully, Sandy Koufax. It brought back so much history in the game. And the interview itself came from the Internet Radio Archives. Now, we're always looking for old audio clips, and if you have any and you'd like to share them with us, you can reach out to us at tbinbb@gmail.com. If you enjoyed the show, please help us by sharing the show and subscribing to us on whatever podcatcher you use. The way that you can help us most is by sharing the show. It's the #1 way that podcasts grow, and if you can share the show on social media with your friends, tell a friend, it really helps us grow the show. And secondly, we ask you to please consider sponsoring a page on thisdayinbaseball.com. You can go to Sandy's page, you can go to Don Drysdale, just go to thisdayinbaseball.com/Sandy Koufax, thisdayinbaseball.com/Don Drysdale, and consider sponsoring a page. And you can write your own personal message with the link on it. If you're not into these guys, we have players, events, and so much more. I'm sure that if you're a baseball fan, you're going to find some page on This Day in Baseball that is going to interest you. So again, try to consider please sponsoring a page on thisdayinbaseball.com. And lastly, again, thanks for joining us today. Now look for some shows as we creep into the March episodes from Leo DeRocha, Mel Ott, Joe DiMaggio, Jim Rice, and so much more. And until next time, my name's Tom Hannon, and I hope to see you at the ballpark. Peace.
So I say D, I say D-O, D-O-D, D-O-D-G, D-O-D-G-E-R-S, team, 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 O. I say O-M, O-M-A, O-M-A-L, O-M-A-L-L-E-Y. Oh, really? No O'Malley. Sandy Koufax, oh, my Drysdale Maury Wills, I love you so. And we defy the J-I-N-T, J-I-N-T-S, Giants, level, Orlando Cepeda is at bat with the bases jammed. Orlando Cepeda with a wham, bam, he hit a grand slam in the very first inning, but it's only the beginning. In the third, like a bird, we get 2-1 on the way, then fairly hits into a double play. Here comes Big Frank Howard, yes sirree. Boy, what a swing! Strike 3. O-dem B, O-dem B-U, B-U-M, B-U-M-S. Them bums, them bums, them dry bums. Oh, they may be bums, but they're my bums. Top of the 5th, say hey, Willie Mays hits a 3-bagger down the right field line. But he's out trying to stretch it to a homer as Roseboro tags him on the bottom of the spine. With the crack you can hear all the way back up to San Francisco. Open your hospital! Inning 6, Maury Wills draws a walk in the coach's box. Leo DeRocha, Leo DeRocha starts to wiggle and to twitch. A signal? No, an itch. Go, Maury, go, Maury, go, go, go. Maury goes, the catcher throws right from the solar plexus. At the bag, he beats the tag, that mighty little waif, and umpire Conlon cries, "You're out!" Out? Out? Down in the dugout, Alston glowers. Up in the booth, Vin Scully frowns. Out in the stands, O'Malley grins. Attendance 50,000. And what does O'Malley do? Bottom of the 9th, 4-0, last chance. Push the button. Oh, we're pleading, begging on our knees. Come on, you Flatbush refugees. Maury Wills at bat, hit it for me once. Stu Miller throws, Maury bunts. Cepeda runs to field the ball, and Hiller covers first. Haller runs to back up Hiller. Hiller crashes into Miller. Miller falls, drops the ball. Conlon calls safe. Yay, Maury! Gilliam up. Miller grunts. Miller throws. Gilliam bunts. Cepeda runs to field the ball, and Hiller covers first. Haller runs to back up Hiller. Hiller crashes into Miller. Miller falls, drops the ball. Conlon calls safe. Yay, Conlon! Willie Davis gets a hit, and Tommy does the same. Here comes Mr. Howard with the chance to win the game. Hit it once. Big Frank bunts. Cepeda runs to field the ball. So does Hiller. So does Miller. Miller hollers. Hiller. Hiller hollers. Miller. Haller hollers. Hiller points to Miller with his fist. And that's the Miller, Hiller, Haller, hallelujah twist. The Davis score is 4-4. Howard's still running the bases. From second to third, it's almost absurd. Amazement on everyone's faces. He's heading for home. He hasn't a chance. The poor nut is going to be dead. But the ball hits him right in the seat of his pants. And he scores. That's using your head. So
I say
D. I say D-O. D-O-D-G-E-R-S. The team that's all heart and all thumbs. They're my Los Angeles, your Los Angeles, our Los Angeles. Do you think we'll really win the pennant?
A late and great song and dance man, Danny Kaye, who loved his Los Angeles Dodgers.